Okay, I think we are ready now. Bar graphs and picture graphs. The difference between the two isn't really much, except that in picture graphs we use a picture of the objects that are being counted. Not every set of data can really have a picture graph. For example, in this information right here, we're talking about games, softball games. You really can't draw a picture of a softball game, right? So that's not going to work. These are called tally mark record sheets, and I know that you guys have been familiar with that. How can we make and interpret bar graphs? That is our learning target for the day. So this table shows the number of wins and losses for a softball teams at 3 different schools. So imagine that these are all 3 Pipestone schools. It tells how many games were won at each school and how many games were lost. What does each tally mark actually stand for then? Well, yeah, but these stand for wins and these stand for losses, but any tally mark in this, no, not for a number, a game. So each tally mark represents a game. So what about the diagonals? What do they mean? The diagonals. Kaden? That's right. That means it's a set of 5. It's the 5th tally, and they put a diagonal across it because it makes things really easy to count. Sometimes when you put a lot of them right next to each other, it's tough to count. So now we know 5 plus 1 more, 5 plus 3 more. A bar graph now uses rectangles, or bars, to show and compare data that tells how much. Double bar graphs, which you may see today as well, they use 2 either different colored bars or different shades of the same color. How can we display the softball wins and loss record for the 3 high schools in a double bar graph? Well, they would take this graph, and the first thing that they would do is they would list the schools along the axis. This is the x-axis. It goes side to side. So the 3 schools are listed here. Now we have to make a scale along the side. That scale is going to be numbers, but again, the y-axis, because that's the up and down one. But before we make a scale, we have to think about how big do we want our intervals to be. You've probably seen graphs where the intervals are by 1s, by 2s, by 5s, by 10s, by 100s, by 1000s. Okay? So since the scale represents the total tournament games, probably you want to think about somewhere in there it needs to have whatever number from your tally stuff is the biggest number and whatever number is the smallest number, the greatest and the least. So the greatest number on here would be 8. The smallest number would be 3. So somewhere along here we need to have an 8 and a 3. So what intervals do you think that we should use? 2s? Well, 0 is always our origin. This is always where we start. 2s would be okay, but 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Do we have any numbers that high? Not even close, do we? So do you think 2s are a good choice for intervals? Darius says he thinks we should use just intervals of 1. I think he's right. Intervals of 1. There's nothing that's over 10 on this piece of information. So I think intervals of 1 is a good choice. Now we can label our axes. Our axes have to have a label. What would we name this one? These are all what? High schools. Good job. Brendan, I need your eyes and your ears up here. Front of the room. What about the numbers? What do they represent? Darius? Games. Good work. Okay, now we also need a key. We need a key. So you can choose 2 colors or 2 shades to make a key. And our key is going to show wins and losses. Green is wins, purple is losses. Then we can take our information and plot it. We can put our bars in. There we go. Now keep in mind, If you put the green bar on the left side, it has to be on the left side for all of them. You wouldn't want to put the green bar here, here, and here. It needs to stay consistent. Last, we have to put a title on every graph we make, no matter what kind it is. Softball Tournament Records is the title that they chose. Now, let's interpret the graph. What does this graph show us? It shows us how many wins and losses these schools have. Good job. Okay. As you're looking at that, answer this question for me. Which high school lost the fewest tournament games? Cole? North only lost 3 tournament games. Which school won the most? Natasha? And they were, how many? How many did they win? 8. That's right. Good work. Okay, let's take a look at some of the questions. So before we go on, we mentioned briefly that you can also take that kind of information and you can put it in picture graph form. Now, we couldn't really draw a picture of a game, but there are things we can draw pictures of, even if we're not great artists. So let's pretend you have the number of cats, dogs, and birds in a neighborhood. Which kind of graph would you use? A bar graph or a picture graph? Raise your hand if you think you know. Brendan? A bar graph. It would work, but what would be even better? Because you could draw a picture. You could put that in, if there are 4 dogs in your neighborhood, you could draw 4 dogs. If there are 10 cats, you could draw 10 cats. Okay? Now, if you're dealing with big amounts of numbers, like large numbers, let's pretend you live in a neighborhood that has, oh goodness, 27 cats, then you could make a key so each cat represented 2 or 3. That's right. Okay, here's some more information. The number of cattle that are on 3 ranches. Will just said that's probably a lot. Aaron? A bar graph would work. It would work, you bet. Or could we make a picture graph and each cow represents 100 or 50? Sure, we could do that. You bet. Okay, so let's take a look at some questions before we open our book and look at some graphs today. Okay, there is a bar graph. What information is true? There's more students in choir than in orchestra. There's more girls than boys in choir. There's as many boys as there are girls in jazz band. The marching band has the most 5th grade students of all the groups. Which one is true? Kiara? D is true. Marching band has 40 plus 47. That's about 87. That's more than any of the others combined. Okay. What information is missing from this graph? Look at your choices. What's missing? Sam? We're missing a title. You bet. What would be a good title for this graph? Number of... No, that's not the title. That's the name of this axis right here. No, that's not the name of the graph. Graph titles are always at the top. Hill School. Students at Hill School. Students at Brown School. Students at Laffy Taffy School. Okay, if you were making a bar graph, which bar would have the longest bar? Which one would be the longest bar? Whoops, sorry, I was trying to scroll.
Good morning, it's Monday, April 14th. There'll be no...
Which bar would be the longest bar? Alexis, where's your glasses, babe? Where's your glasses? Oh, great. Okay. So take a look at the screen, and which bar would be the longest bar, Alexis? US 2002. Here's our biggest number right here. That's right. How about this one is a little different. Now this one is the same graph, but which statement is false? There's more boys than girls in marching band. Yes or no? Oh, well, no, it's always works well when it's the first one, doesn't it? Then you don't even have to look at the other three. Where are you going? Huh? Really? Whose is this? What's yours? Your math from this morning. And oh. Okay. This one I'm skipping. All right, I would like you to open up your textbooks. We're going to look at some graphs within your textbook today. Now, for those of you who are watching at home, you need to make this graph a little bit bigger so that you can see it better. 432, you are going to see a picture graph. Yep, sorry about that. 432. You're going to see a picture graph that represents some rubber duck tournaments. Have you ever heard of those? We don't have them around here. 4 locations. Now check out the key. My first question to you. One duck represents how many real rubber ducks? Sarah? 1,000. 432. Well, 432. 432. My next question. How many rubber ducks were in the St. Louis Riverfront tournament? Eileen? 15,000. That's right. That's right. Now, let me ask you this. How many more were in the St. Louis Riverfront tournament than the Carnegie? Cangaree. I said it wrong. Cangaree tournament. How many more were in Riverfront than Cangaree? Aaron P? 10,000. How did you do that? 15 minus 5. Thank you very much. Now I want you to go to the next page, which has a double bar graph. That asks kids at one school, the question was, how do you get to school? Now there were only 2 choices. You could either ride the bus or some other way. So my first question is, how many students in grade 6 get to school with the bus? Aiden? 16. How about grade 7? Kaylin? Good. How many more in grade 6 than grade 7? Cole? Cole? 3. 3 more. Thank you. In which grade do the most students get to school by bus? What grade is that? Brendan? Grade by bus. Grade 5, you're right. In which grade do the fewest students get to school by bus, Brendan? Grade 8, you're right. Which grade has the greatest difference between those who get to school by bus and other ways? Which grade has the biggest difference? Alexis? 5th grade. Ah, what is that difference, by the way? What is that difference? I don't think so. 14. That's right. Okay, you know what? We can't actually use these because these are not finished. Wish we could. Okay, we are going to